Every single day I spend talking to people that are making $100,000 a month, making $1 million a month. And these are people that are now close personal mentors and friends. So I get to speak with the benefit of their experience as opposed to doing this by myself. And that has led to business success, business growth, and the new level of goals that I'm creating.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 366. My guest today is only 27 years old, but he's already hit his financial freedom goals. And recently, he booked a one-way flight to travel the world on the $25,000 per month his real estate business is generating. Brian Luebben got his start house hacking 4 units for financial independence, and he hit his 5-year goals in only 6 months. He's also the host of the Action Academy podcast, where he talks to entrepreneurs on how to earn freedom in life and business. Today, he's going to share his secrets on how he's been able to achieve his goals so quickly. Brian, welcome to the show.
Brian, thanks for having me. I was saying before off mic and off camera that we both have very strong names, very strong, noble, capable names. So we have to get into it today. And I'm excited to provide as much value as possible to the listeners, because at the end of the day, it's not about Brian or Brian. It's about you listening in your car, on the way to work, on the way from work, on the way to the next deal. So hopefully we can give you guys as much value as possible in the next 30 minutes.
Tell us about yourself and how you got started investing in real estate.
So the 30,000 foot view, I know a lot of us have been on podcasts or listened to podcasts where the guest goes on 20 minutes of the episode. And by minute 20, they're still talking about the lessons that they learned in wrestling practice in high school. So we're not going to do that. It's about a minute, 2 minutes. So bear with me, guys. But graduated college, just like all the rest of us, had no idea what I wanted to do, which is ridiculous to even think that we would. Went into sales, corporate sales, B2B at an enterprise level, made it to the top of that company. I was number 8 out of 5,079 in my position. So I won all the awards, all the bells and whistles, sales rep of the year, rookie of the year, got everything I ever wanted, made it to the freaking mountaintop. And I realized that I was climbing the wrong mountain. I was like, this isn't going to work. And so what was the catalyst to that was I looked at my boss's boss, right? And this is advice that I would give to any investors that are listening to this right now that may be considering that exodus from their corporate job and to go full-time into real estate. If you look at your boss's boss, you have a very clear 5 to 10 year vision of who you would be. And if you don't want to be that guy or that girl, then that's how you know it's time to start your escape plan. So that's what I did. And I started buying house hacks. So I've got 4 units. It's nothing sexy, but what it did was it built the baseline foundation for me to be able to get that baseline financial freedom and then build businesses on top of that to where I could exit. So when in my job, I was making, a good bit of money. I was making over $200,000 a year. And so that's a very hard goal to try to achieve, especially when you're looking at it from a purely cash flow perspective. So what I shifted my goal to through coaching, mentorship, joining a lot of masterminds, they recommended to just get that baseline goal hit, that baseline financial freedom, and take this goal one chunk at a time. They say, stop trying to wait until you have this entire picture together and instead do it one bite at a time. And then that's the route that I took. Ended up getting about $4,000 in cash flow between my properties and renting my car out on Turo. Then I started up a podcast you alluded to, Action Academy. And that started producing revenue as well. So I'm excited to get into the revenue streams both there, through the real estate, any other entrepreneurial venture. Jumped out of that job in March of this year, 2022. Hopped on a one-way flight July 6th. And I accomplished my dream of my life, which was to go travel around the world. I've been traveling full-time for 5 months now. And I am currently in Floripa, Brazil. It's an island in South Brazil. And this is where I do real estate deals. I'm planning my future for the next 6 to 12 months with what this economy is looking like and building my podcast. So that's me in a nutshell.
You've reminded me of a book by Robert Allen called Multiple Streams of Income. Everything you just described embodies that. The 4-unit house hacking, that's where you're living in one of the units and renting out the other 3. Turo is something I just became aware of over the summer when I couldn't find a rental car. It's like an Airbnb for people who want to rent out their cars. What kind of money are you making off of that?
Nothing too sexy, like $600, $700, $800 a month. It's very variable. But what the real estate did is I have 2 properties and I did what's called a luxury house hack, is I believe what Bigger Pockets would coin it as, to where in my market, Atlanta, to go really real estate specific to begin the conversation, there are not that many duplexes. Just plain and simple. The ones that are built were built very high-end class A luxury in the middle of the city. You're going to pay like $2 million for that duplex, or you're going to have duplexes that are way out in the country, absolute C class, D class. You don't want to touch that thing with a 10-foot pole. Like you wouldn't invest in that with your friend's money. So that was a big no-no for me. So I said, okay, cool. Like, how am I going to go about this? And so what I ended up doing and the strategy that I was doing was essentially co-living before co-living became sexy over the last 2 years or so. And so what I did was I would buy a conventional house, split level, 1970s, 1980s build with good bones. And these houses have in-law suites. And they're essentially a duplex just with a staircase in between the levels. So what I noticed was, I was like, okay, these houses are sitting on the MLS because they have 2 kitchens. And most people don't need 2 kitchens anymore, right? Like it's not in trend or in vogue. So I said, for me to build a kitchen, it's going to be $20,000. So my thing is I'm going to look at the MLS for houses with 2 kitchens, 2 separate entrances, 1970s, 1980s build. That's my bread and butter. And what happens when you get super specific is then all of a sudden you become that freaking guy or that girl for that asset type, right? The more specific that you get, the better results you get. The riches are in the niches. So I had my realtor, I had all these friends out looking for these houses. And then I started just getting sent houses left and right. And they're like, oh, you got to check this out. You got to check this one out. And what ended up happening was I ended up doing 2 of them. So I did the house hack method. For people that are unfamiliar, you are able to owner occupy the house. And I did a conventional loan. Before it was 3% down. For my second one, it was 5% down. So I was able to get into these deals with very low to minimal capital. First one, I think, was maybe I bought it for like $275 back in like 2019. And the second one was $315. And now both of these are, up in like the 600s. So that was very fun. And I got to ride the COVID bubble up. So that was really cool. The cash flow, how I rent these is I live downstairs. So I've got the upstairs, which is essentially my HGTV unit is what I call it. And this is a 3-bed, 2-bath, and it looks beautiful. It's very furnished, very nice. And I rent that as a traditional 3-2. Now in the listing, I will have that as just a 1-level, 1-story, 3-2. And then I'll also say in the notes, I'm like, hey, there's a space underneath this that is a separately rented unit. Think of this as a duplex. So I'll rent that out at market value. And then downstairs, I will rent by the room normally. Or in some cases, there's one where I'm considering, I've got an old tenant that's looking to buy out the entire basement, and I may let him do that. But what that allowed for was an excess of cash flow. So when I was living there, I was already cash flowing while living there. So when I left, these things are cash flowing like $1,400 to $1,600 each net, on top of all the CapEx, PITI, everything, expenses. So now I'm like, oh, okay, like I've got something rolling here. And then it also eliminated my biggest expense. So you add this cash flow on top of somebody that has no rent, no mortgage, essentially, because it's covered as an added ancillary bonus to this. I have no car payment because I bought my cars in cash. I always buy my cars in cash, and I paid off all my student loans. So it's just variable at that point. My fixed expenses are like $600 a month through insurance. That's it.
Let's talk about your goals, because you set some goals in the very beginning of investing. What were they as far, monetarily? How much were you trying to make in passive income and cash flow? And how quickly were you able to reach that goal? And how many units did it take to get there?
So I love the ideas and concepts of goal setting, because what 99% of us do are we set goals that are in our comfort zone based off of our current environment or past environment and experiences, plus or minus 10%, right? So if you are used to this certain level of income or this certain level of wealth, that's what's called your financial thermostat, that's where you're going to sit and that's where you're going to set your goals. So you stretch yourself just slightly, but you don't really completely break your identity to become that new person. So for me to leave that job, I was making $200 a year. So that was anywhere between like $15,000 to $20,000, $25,000 a month. It was a variable sales role. I was like, okay, how do I replace this? So what ended up happening was I hired a bunch of coaches. I hired a bunch of mentors. I joined mastermind groups and I started reinvesting in myself. And the advice that they gave was that I wasn't necessarily having a goal of units that I thought I was. My goal was actually just the cash flow to be able to exit this job because I was wanting to get out. I was ready to get out. And so my original goal was a 5-year plan to get multifamily. Like that was the goal. As I was like, okay, at $200 a door, here's how much multifamily that I can buy. Here's how many units I need to buy per quarter, per year to yield $25,000 of cash flow. But what ended up happening was with the advice of my mentors, they said, hey, go back. Now that you have your kind of freedom bases covered here, they're like, let's just make the goal cash flow. So how do we generate $25,000 of cash flow as opposed to it being quote unquote passive income, right? So I ended up starting up the podcast. And that was just something that I started up as a thing that I enjoyed doing. And what it ended up turning into was a full-fledged freaking business that I could do on top of my real estate and also use the funnel towards my real estate deals, which I'm sure you've seen through this show, right? And it's an insane ride to take. So then that show started printing out anywhere between $9,000 to $12,000 a month in cash flow through advertising revenue. And I did not believe that that was going to happen ever, but that's the reality of the situation. So when you added that, all of a sudden I've got 12,000 there, and then I add another 4,000, and then I was basically where I wanted to be. I said, okay, cool. Like I'm ready to get up out of here. So I made sure that revenue was coming in for January, February, and March, 3 months. And I built up a 6-month cash reserve cushion. And then on March 17th, left the job and went full time into the podcast. And now I'm sitting on cash reserves to be able to make a larger investment in real estate in the upcoming 6 to 12 months, in which case I'm aiming for industrial. I want to do a commercial triple net lease play with some of my friends that are major operators in the space. So that's my entire strategy.
Training, mentorship, coaching. A lot of people are hesitant to pay for those things because it does come with a big price tag. You jumped into it. Tell us how training and coaching and mentorship has helped you. And was it difficult for you to make that decision to spend the money in the beginning?
In the beginning, of course, it'd be foolish of me and it'd be a bold-faced lie for me to say that it wasn't a stretch when I first started it. But I will say that on my show, I interview 7 to 10 figure entrepreneurs each day. And the commonality that I saw between all of them, which I'm sure you experienced on this show as well, is all of them got to where they were through coaching and mentorship. Is that the only way to get where you want to go? No, but it's an accelerant. So for me, I shifted my perspective of how I view my time. And I realized that time is actually our most valuable currency, and attention, because you pay attention to things just like you guys are paying attention to this show with 30 minutes of your life. So for me, it became a giant game of how do I accelerate this process so much so that I can have as much of my time back and have as long of an investing time horizon as humanly possible. So that's the perspective shift that I had to begin investing. So I invested $36,000 into coaching, masterminds, mentors, all that stuff last year because I just did my taxes. But here's some advice that I can give to people where that figure may be very intimidating, or you may be looking for your first mentor or coach. Here's the advice I would give. In the vetting process, I would not just wing it and look and go for whatever Facebook ad or YouTube ad that pops up on your feed. What I would do is I would go to the seasoned real estate investor that you're meeting through your local meetups, your RIAs, and I would build relationships with them. And I would either go and approach them for a mentorship role or a mentor-mentee role, or I would ask them who they use. So we always want to go through referral when we're vetting these people. Okay. So that's step one, is making sure that this person isn't a huckster, that they're going to completely scam you out of money. It's someone that's actually been there. They've been in the trenches. They've done the work and they've got the results for themselves and then for other people. So then after that, what you want to do is you want to pursue the 2 different ways to attract and maintain a coach and a mentor. So that's either going to be pay to play or seek to serve. And that quote isn't mine. It's awesome. It's actually from a good friend of mine, Gino Barbero. Maybe some of you guys know him, Jake and Gino. They've got a very great multifamily program themselves. And he said that those are the two ways that you get a coach. And so I took that to heart and I was like, okay, pay to play or seek to serve. So you're either going to pay for their time, pay for their coaching program, pay for their mastermind, or you're going to find a very specific and niche pain point that they have. And you're going to approach them with an offer to solve that pain point for free, specifically. And this isn't going to be approaching a mentor and saying, hey, my name's Brian. I'm brand new. What can I help you with? You're not going to get an answer because now I get 100 of those messages a week. And it gives me more work because I don't know what to tell you because I don't know what your strengths and weaknesses are. So you're giving me more work. So what you need to do is you need to find that one thing by following them and paying attention to their content to see what that issue is. And I'll use a context of this to land the plane. So in my context of my podcast, there are some big name guests that I wait for them to release a book, right? Or I wait for them to have some big launch. And then naturally, that's when I can approach them and say, hey, I've got this show on real estate. You want to come on the show? And then that's how it works. That's the best way to get it. You have a Brandon Turner with Bigger Pockets that says, hey, I'm looking for this type of mobile home park in this specific area. You go out there and you say, hey, I'm going to send out all my mailers here. I'm going to find you your freaking mobile home park. Then he's going to say, you're my favorite person in the world. I'll help you. So pay to play, seek to serve. But I think these two, coaching, mastermind, mentorship, is the cheat code to get where you want to go. That's going to be the rocket fuel. Because in closing, my 5-year goal was to leave my job. So I wanted to do it at like 33, but I ended up accomplishing that in 6 months with my mindset coaching and all of that. So I saved 4.5 years of my life. So what's the ROI on that? And I paid, I think, $8,000 for that coach.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. You're 27 years old. You've made things happen very quickly. Why are you in this position now? What do you notice that you're doing differently that other people who are your age aren't doing? And what is it about you that makes you different?
Another piece of advice that I'll give to people that was a cheat code that led for my success would be to stop trying to be the most interesting person in the room and instead seek to be the most interested person in the room. Let me explain and expound on that, right? So a lot of us, especially young guys, we feel like young guys, young girls, we feel like we have something to prove, that we need to prove our worth whenever we go into these rooms. Like I said, the local real estate RIAs, they're normally monthly. Every major city has them, and they're free. And so I would go in there with my chest up and I'd say, this is who I am. Like, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And I'll try to be a big deal. That's not how you get traction. The way that you get traction with these people that are operating at this massively high level is seeking to be the most interested person in the room. So going up to them with a genuine interest and curiosity about what makes them them and how they do things. And you ask them about them and you get them talking. And it all goes back to How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie, which is an amazing book that I would recommend. The thing that people like talking about the most is themselves. So that's what I did. And that's what I apply at scale. So I can speak with the perspective that I have and the experience I have is because I stand on the shoulders of giants. Every single day I spend talking to people that are making $100,000 a month, making $1 million a month. And these are people that are now close personal mentors and friends. So I get to speak with the benefit of their experience as opposed to doing this by myself. And that has led to business success, business growth, and the new level of goals that I'm creating as I've literally traveled around the world. I'm sitting here in Brazil in this beautiful house that it's like the dream come true. So that's what I would recommend is doing that. Also, another pro tip that I would give is when you are approaching this mentor, anybody worth their salt is going to give you some type of test, right? They're going to say, read this book, study this, watch this YouTube video, listen to this podcast. And it's your job to go listen and do that thing, document it, and then send it back to that mentor, that potential mentor. Because then that shows that you are worth the investment and you are worth the time as opposed to 99% of people that aren't going to do that.
Tell us about your podcast and the metrics of those podcasts, because what I'm really interested in is it seems like you've managed to create a lot of cash flow from your podcast. How have you been able to do that? And kind of fill us in on the metrics there.
I will tell you guys a little bit about the industry specifics. I won't go too deep into it because this is a real estate show and I don't want to bore you with the technicalities of podcasting. But there are two ways that you can make money in podcasting, essentially. Well, three ways. One would be to sell your own thing, your own course, your own service, your own coaching, right? Way number one. Way number two would be two different types of advertising, just called CPM and CPA. CPM is cost per mil. Cost per 1,000 downloads. Think Joe Rogan, Traeger Grill. Joe says, Traeger Grill is amazing. Joe makes millions of dollars, right? So that's a very unobtainable way for us to make money as podcasters at a lower level. So what I do is CPA, which is cost per acquisition or cost per affiliate. So for me, all the coaches, all the masterminds that I hired and that I paid money for, I created the podcast and I had the CEOs and the coaches reach out to me and say, hey, you're organically talking about us and your show. We've got 10 people signing up a month from your podcast. And so that's a $10,000 price point. And so for me, I was like, holy crap. Okay, I've got something here. It's working. I'm leading with examples. I'm leading with value here. I did the thing. Now let's form a relationship. So then I tacked 15% on that. So that's the affiliate I get. So every single person that joins said mastermind or coach make $1,500. And then that's relatively passive as opposed to just, actively working towards it. I make my show. And so I just lead with value and that's how you do it. So if anybody's looking to make money in podcasting, that is how I'd recommend going about it, but making sure it's a very niche offer to a niche audience that is valuable and that you believe in and that you do yourself. So that's what I do for my podcast business. And I'm growing a media company on top of it. So should be a fun ride.
What's the frequency of your show? Is it a daily show, a weekly show? And what are the metrics as far as your listenership and audience?
So I started at one episode a week. Then I moved up to two because I was getting backlogged on guests. And then I started doing solo shows. So this is a recommendation I'd give to any podcast is to do your hour-long interviews as well as maybe an 8 to 10 minute show on, hey, I'm seeing this in the market. Here's top 5 ways to prep for the upcoming recession. Here's 6 ways to underwrite a commercial property, stuff like that. It takes 8 to 10 minutes. So what I do now is 5 days a week. I do a show Monday through Friday, clockwork. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are the hour-long interviews. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's 8 to 10 minutes, bite-sized, actionable, get in, get out, move on. The show gets about 30,000 downloads a month right now. And it grows at 40% each month. So for the last year. So my goal is 1 million downloads a month.
You're talking to successful entrepreneurs, as successful real estate investors. What are the 1 or 2 top things that they all have in common?
The top things that these people have in common, and keep in mind, guys, these are entrepreneurs that are branching through all the different types of real estate investing. Brian talks about these on his show all the time. You've got everything from Airbnb, commercial, multifamily, flipping, wholesaling, running property management companies, whatever have you. These guys do it all, and they all make money doing it. So there's a million ways to make $1 million. So the top 2 to 3 tips that I've seen that are commonalities between all these people are, number one, they have a clear vision. So there's a book called Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold. I would recommend going and reading that. What it is you set a 3-year vision for the future about what you want your life to look like, and you write it down in present day format. And this is going to be what your life, what your business, what your relationships, where are you living, what does a day look like? All of them pretty much across the board have impeccable vision for where they're going in the future. And then this vision is so strong that they can get other people bought into it. So they create the vision. They say, this is where I'm going. They share it with the world. And then the world all jumps on their train to go with them and help them get towards this vision. So an example of this would be for you listening. If your vision is to own, 2,000 units in the next 3 years, I would create that vision, create that game plan, and share it with your network to everyone. And you will be shocked pleasantly at how many people come out of the woodwork to help you. It's insane. So that's the first. Second would be that you can make it to the 6 to 7 level mark solo. You can do it. I would compare this to like summiting a mountain in North Carolina, or maybe climbing a 14er in Colorado, where it's difficult, but you can do it by yourself. To get past that level, you need an entire team behind you. It's like climbing Mount Everest. You need the guide that's like leading you up the mountain, that's been doing it for decades. And then you also need the team that's going with you, that's strapped up next to you, so that when you say, hey, I'm getting cold, they're saying, hey, we're not going back down, buddy, we're going up. And that's the accountability. So you need this entire team behind you to get up further. So that would be the accountability groups, and that'd be the coaching mastermind. So you need the mentors. So they have an obscene focus on figuring out not how to learn the skill, but they ask, who is the person in the world that has this skill that I can get in their world, or I can hire them to teach me this and accelerate this for me? And this applies at every single tax bracket. So I've got the 7-figure guys that are going to the 8-figure guys that are saying, how did you do it? I need help. 8-figure guys are going into the $100 million guys and they're saying, how did you do it? I need help. And then I've got multiple 100 million friends and billionaire friends that are doing that at different verticals. So for them, it may be hiring like this health coach or hiring a relationship and marriage counselor that's the best in the industry. So they all have this very obscene focus and myopic focus on mentorship and coaching and getting above. And remember, guys, you don't have to pay for this. Just find a way to provide value. And I would say the third commonality would be that they enjoy the journey. And that's the last piece of advice that I would probably give is, instead of attaching your emotion to summiting the mountain, I would attach my emotion to the climb. And so all of them have a love of the game, of the process, as opposed to, hitting millionaire status, hitting 10 million. Because when you hit, like, it becomes, like kind of emotionally numbing. And you summit the mountain and you're like, oh, okay, now what? And you realize that you're at the smallest mountain on the peak and the range. And so that's the advice I would give. Those are the top 3.
Brian, what's your favorite hack or app?
Right now, I think I've said enough hacks for people they'd get overwhelmed. I'll say my favorite app is Notion. So before, I was very scattered everywhere operationally, and now I use Notion, which is a website and an app. And it's essentially like your entire database, like everything that you want. It's like the control center for your life. So for me, I've got 2 virtual assistants, executive assistants, and they work with me in Notion, and I can post my vision. I can post what I'm doing with my real estate podcast, every single different arm, even to my social media. I can track all of that and say, hey, here's your standard operating procedures housed here. This is what you do. And I can do all that through my phone as well. So Notion.
Spell that for us.
Notion. Notion. I think it's free. At worst, it's maybe like $12 to $20 a month. It's freaking amazing. It just takes a bit to get used to, just like Trello or any of the other ones. But I always tell people, find out whatever you can delegate and delegate the crap out of it and get your time back for your highest ROI activities, which for me, podcasting and being on other podcasts and analyzing deals with my team for the future here in the next 6 to 12 months, those are my 3 KPIs. Those are my 3 actions that I do.
Brian, how would people find out more about you or get a hold of you?
So you can check out the podcast, Action Academy Podcast. I've had billionaire founder of Priceline.com, Jeff Hoffman. Got Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets. I've got Josh Dorkin coming on, who founded Bigger Pockets. A lot of high-level real estate investors. We talk about the business side, and we also talk about the mindset and freedom side. So we talk about a kind of all-encompassing view of business on the show. So 5 episodes a week. If you want to check that out, you can hit me up there. If you want a text, if you're more of a text person and you want those resources, you can go to w2toworldtravel.com. I have a 30-page ebook that walks through my process of leaving corporate America to travel the world, W2 to World Travel, and you can get that there for free.
Brian, thanks so much for coming on the show. I've enjoyed our conversation. Very impressed by the fact that you're 27 years old and you've accomplished so much and you have such clear vision and strategy to get to where you are and where you're going next. So thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing all that with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. And I hope that you guys enjoyed and got some value from this. Pick 2 to 3 things that we talked about and go take action on them today.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.